Okay, chapter 4. On St. Charles Avenue in the Garden District, the grand house still shone in the metallic wash of the sun like prim, white-haired matrons, as if nothing happened. Sweeping turfs of gold fronted the century-old wrought-iron gate mansions, their spine erect, their clapboard unstained. The giant bathtub ring that roped most of the low-lying city had faded with the rising higher ground. But the St. Charles trees remembered. The nightmare music of the killing winds had stunned them, and the panicked trunks of the cypresses still leaned against the memory, the way the children flinched from a hand of pain. Okay. He parked across from the Catholic church, dug into his gym bag for a clean white t-shirt and put it on. Getting out of the car, he swabbed at his forehead with an overused handkerchief and stared at the brass numbers, 1924, the clean white columns of Matthew Parmener's Victorian-style house, the gate that fenced in a yard of only slightly overgrown juniper grass. The house looked even more impressive than he remembered. He turned up his bottled water for a last swig, tossed the empty onto the car seat, and tried to brush back a nagging thought. If things had worked the way they should have, Daddy could have lived on this street. Daddy would be safe. He climbed the steps to the gallery, glancing into the darkened windows of the leaded beveled glass. Austere and private, the St. Charles house had never offered visible clues of life inside, even before the storm. But Julian guessed the old man was inside. Older than his father and many years retired, the former restaurateur rarely left the house. Like two stubborn and embattled sea captains, neither man would have jumped ship for a mere storm. This would not be easy. His father's horrible business deal, all that lost money, still smarted like a glancing wound. But he pulled the mold-stained note from his pocket and read it again, then tucked it back. Matthew Parmener is Daddy's friend. For Simon's sake, he rang the bell, sighed deeply, and waited. An hour earlier, he had met with Sylvia at Ondine's Oysters, a little dive at the edge of the French Quarter, not far from the French Market. A bar, really, with a cardboard sign outside had boasted, throughout the entire storm and evaluation, we never closed. He took a seat in the back and ordered a coffee, then another as he waited. The dark interior seemed normal. The only sign of post-catastrophe afterlife was the clump of National Guardsmen gathered around the bar in severe haircuts and khaki fatigues. He stood and waited when Sylvia entered, the open door allowing a momentary flush of rectangular sunlight into the room. Morning, he held out her chair as she sat. With no makeup, her hair tied in a scarf, she looked, for the first time he had seen her since that Sunday afternoon after the storm, close to her age. Her eyes were puffy, red-rimmed by worry and insomnia. Morning, baby, she said, wearily untying her scarf and putting her curlless, gray-rooted hair. You drinking coffee? Shoot, I need me something stronger than that. Julian smiled. When his father had introduced him to Sylvia one sunny Labor Day after he and his buddies and the elegant gents had second line through the trim, a seldom-seen sparkle had seemed to backlight Simon's eyes. Clearly, it had been Sylvia who, after Ladina had died, lifted Simon out of his quicksand of grief and got him interested once again in living. Stronger? I'm sure they can help you with that. He nodded towards the bar. If you're hungry, somebody brought a whole box of muffalettas from the National Guard and the cops and the volunteers. They're telling everybody to help themselves. They deserve a lot more than that for trying to clean up this mess of the city. Lord have mercy. I tell you, I haven't had a decent night's sleep since all this happened. I'll split a sandwich with you, but baby, I got something to show you. She exhaled a huff of air. Well, I went back to Simon's, she said, leaning forward with her eyebrows arched and her eyes bright and brimming with something he had hoped. I just felt like we missed something, so I took my nephew with me. He unfolded the paper. The handwriting was unmistakable. The dramatic, forward-leaning slant, the longest strokes. It was Simon. Julian's heart jumped. He looked up, his eyes wide. Where'd you? Rashad climbed up to the attic through a little door in the ceiling of the bedroom closet. Simon must have been up there for days, hours. This note was wedged in between the beams of the attic ceiling. This is it, baby. Simon got out. He's safe somewhere. He read the note. Julian read the note, his eyes brimming. Julian, I don't know where I'm going, but I got to get out of here. I don't know if I'll make it because there's so much water out here. Find me if you can or what's left of me. If something bad happens, then take me back to Silver Creek and lay me down beside your mama. I love you, son, no matter what. Your dad. Julian looked up from the letter, his eyes glazed, his throat tight. The last 2 lines sank and burned like a sharp knife pressed to his chest, and would have hurt even if he hadn't wasted his last conversation with his father being disrespectful. Julian rubbed his temple. He could be anywhere. Anything could have happened after he wrote this. But this tells us that he tried to get out. He tried, baby. Did your father ever talk to you about Silver Creek? He almost laughed. When Julian missed the chance to burn Julian's ear about Silver Creek, there were 5 feet of water in the street. Silver Creek's farther than Baton Rouge. No way he could have gotten there without his car, and his car is still at the house, rusting away. He could have gotten a ride there. You know, I tried to call Cousin Genevieve at Silver Creek a bunch of times. Nobody there, Sylvia. Sylvia finally reached in her purse, pulled out a thick wad of paper, each one with handwritten names and phone numbers. She waved them in the air. I don't know what else to do. Besides the 2 of us, we must have made 400 calls all over the state. I think we need some help now if we're ever going to find out what happened to your father. In the next breath came the words, Matthew Parmenter. Remember, the man's got connections and he's your father's best friend. You know what? I think I better stop because there's never a good spot. It's just not a good, it's just not. I would just suggest that you read the book. I kind of question myself. It's just so full of rich history that she gives a just big, deep, I mean, the words and sentences go on and on, but that's part of the history of Louisiana. There's just so much history with part of it, and you know that with slavery happening in the Caribbean and things moving up into the States, there's just so much that goes on in the history of there, and the houses, everything really means something. I just think our culture has gotten away from that, and I think she tried to capture that when she was writing this book. So those were only the first 2 or 3 chapters. I was skipping some paragraphs because it just goes on and on to explain more, and I'm just going to stop there. I can give any answers about this book. I finally finished it. It was really good reading, and I believe this was her first or second book. She only has 2 books out. So, any questions, comments, anything? Yes?
I forget if you said it in the beginning. Is that fiction or non-fiction?
It really is fiction.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was from her own family experiences.
She never lets on. I don't know if she gathered things from people she knew, but this is very realistic. I'm quite sure somebody somewhere has lived through that experience with losing track of family members, the phone lines going dead. I don't want to give away the end of it unless somebody asks me. It is just the turn of events is amazing. So,
Rosalyn's story, who wrote this, is a professional violinist playing with the Fort Worth Orchestra.
yes,
Symphony.
yes.
And I don't know much about her mom, dad, but was she originally from New Orleans? Or?
They say so in the acknowledgement. She lives in Dallas, and I was just so happy over the book. I didn't even take time to really read. They do say in the acknowledgments a little bit about her, but she never really comes out and says anything about her. It was all about the book or the people who helped her to write the book. So that's more research for all of us to do, so we can figure out where she came from. So yes.
Have any of you been to New Orleans immediately after the storm? About 9 months afterwards, I took a truckload of art supplies and school books down to St. Bernard Parish from the ninth ward across the state line in Mississippi. And I'm telling you, 9 months after that storm, what I remember of it was people, and all the people who were helping were standing in lines, 30 and 40 people lining up a couple of fast food wagons along the street. There wasn't a store open, there wasn't a gas station open. We went 35 miles to get gas.
Oh my gosh.
There were porta potties at the intersection of every 4 streets. This is 9 months after the storm.
Yeah.
There was no water, no electric, not a store open for 35 miles. It's mind-blowing.
It's amazing. I know our church van well, I won't say van, they sent a truck and things, lots of workers and things, and there was, I can't remember the initials, but they had initials for certain houses where there were dead people, and I cannot remember. Right, all of that. It's just astounding. And I have a best friend of mine who is like a big sister to me. She's originally from there, and she's taught me how to cook some Cajun sorts of foods. They have a recipe in here that I am going to try. So I'm going to go back and find it for red beans and rice. I'm going to find it. I know it's not going to be as authentic, but I'm going to try my best. It wiped out her family's. Her mother had to move up north, and she stays with her in the Cleveland area because they lost everything. There was nothing to go back for. So it's just amazing how it's almost like a little bit of Haiti right here in America. It is still left undone. Unbelievable.
It seems like the tsunami and then Haiti and New Orleans were like these huge catastrophic things that just changed so many lives.
Yeah.
Displaced so many people.
Yes. Amazing. I'll try to explain a little more too. I mentioned the word Matthew Parmenter. He was the restaurateur who hired Simon to be a chef there. Simon was an extraordinary chef who just was well known for his cooking, and he made a business deal with Matthew Parmenter that he didn't really agree with putting out a commercial brand of red beans and rice that he didn't like. Well, it sold well, and he made lots of money off of it, and his son resented him for doing that. And Simon could have cared less. He said, it's just a bag of rice. It's nothing like my original. So he just did not care about the money that went along with it, or could have really put him up into fame and fortune. I'll leave it at that. We'll just, and then of course his son felt like this white man had taken advantage of his father, though his father was very emphatic. I don't care what happens. This is my best friend and stayed my best friend, and I don't want any part of that, because if it couldn't be his original cooking, he didn't want any parts of it. I can't tell you more about it because it would give the story away. They eventually, Sylvia meets up with Genevieve. Those are other family relatives. They were safe because they got out of the city. They all met at one of the relatives' houses, and he hears a familiar voice. It's his ex-girlfriend who came along, who Simon absolutely loved, and they broke up for certain reasons. I'll leave that story untold. And I think that's all of the characters, and they just kind of flip-flops. There's a turn of events, and it's always, as soon as you say, okay, this is moving too slow, something else happens. So it's just, she does a lot of explanation, but it does give you a rich history of what had happened leading up to these events. So now I want to read her other book. There's one that says, So Now I Sing, and another one is More Than You Know. That's the next one that I'm looking for. So anything else? Any comments about it? Are there any parts that seemed extremely slow? I don't know what, I couldn't hear myself read. Was it okay? I need, okay, because I was like, am I boring these people to death? I can't do, I'm trying to remember where I can skip forward without missing too much information. Okay, thank you. Thank you for listening.